It's going to depend on which market you're in and consumer preferences in that country. But in general, OTT has picked up a lot of traffic. It's not clear that that traffic, that the voice traffic at least, is coming at the expense of telecom companies, or at least that all of it is. But certainly given the very large volumes of traffic that companies like Skype are routing, some of it is coming at the expense of telecom companies. Skype in 2013, we estimate that their international traffic grew by about 54 billion minutes in 2013. And that means the increase that Skype achieved in 2013 on international traffic is about 50% more gain than every telephone company in the world combined. So when you think about how large those volumes are, clearly some of it is coming at the expense of telecom companies. So we see overall that demand for international voice and for international communications is very strong, but a growing number of consumers are finding they don't need an international telephone company to carry those calls for them. And the OTT providers are also offering services that the telephone companies don't offer. Much of Skype's traffic, about 40 or 50% of Skype's traffic, is video telephony. And that's not something that telecom service providers were ever offering. So Skype is offering them a service that they couldn't get from their telephone company and making use of it. So I think it's a natural response on consumers' parts, and Skype found a need in the market and did a good job of serving it. The challenge for telephone companies is how to adapt to that new market reality, because they can't block Skype. They can't make their customers unhappy by not allowing them to use the services they want to use. But at the same time, they have their own cost structures to maintain, and they need to figure out how to adjust to the new market realities. That doesn't mean that international voice or international phone service is going to go away anytime soon. International voice traffic is still growing. International telephone traffic is still growing, probably about 7% or so annually. So it's still a growing market in terms of volume. But in terms of revenue, it's not really growing anymore. It's pretty much flat in most regions of the world. But there's really no substitute for the PSTN either. The OTT providers get a lot of publicity and a lot of attention, and there have obviously been two very big acquisitions this year of OTT providers, of WhatsApp for an unbelievable amount of money, and for Viber, which was acquired for a quite large amount of money. But the interesting thing for me is that none of these OTT service providers have come up with a business model for voice, a successful post-PSTN business model for voice. Virtually all of Skype's revenue comes from the calls that they terminate to the PSTN through telcos. So some of that traffic comes back to the telephone companies, and some of that revenue comes back to telephone companies through termination of revenues. But the advertising model for voice hasn't really picked up traction. It's a very small part of the overall revenues. So the OTT providers don't want the PSTN to go away. It's the only way they make money. So they don't wish you any harm. They'd like you to be around for a long time as a business partner. So it's a challenge for them also. The challenge for phone companies is that you haven't figured out a post-PSTN business model for voice either. But there are about 8 billion endpoints on a PSTN, fixed and mobile endpoints on a PSTN. Facebook has about 1.2 million users. At least that's the last number they reported, but many of them aren't active users. But there's no network out there that connects as many people as effectively as the PSTN. So it's going to be around for a long time to come, and certainly telephone service is not going to go away at any time soon. Well, we track international internet traffic. We track the volume of cross-border traffic and the capacity on international internet backbones. And 2013 is the first year that we've been tracking internet traffic trends that we've seen traffic growth drop into the 30%, into the mid-30% range. Until 2012, traffic grew about 42%, and in 2013, international traffic grew about 33% by our estimates. And the interesting thing about the growth rate dropping below that level is that at 41%, traffic volume doubles every 2 years. So it's kind of a magic number that, that's nice to aim for, do better than that. And it was more than doubling every 2 years until recently, and we've now dropped below that level globally. There are certainly still regions of the world and markets where traffic is growing faster than 40%. Asian traffic for about 40% in 2013, but it's coming down also. And we've seen that steady decline in every part of the world. And there are a couple of reasons for that declining growth rate. One is simply that the volume of traffic is very large. And as a consequence, the amount of incremental growth that it takes to achieve high growth rates, the amount of new capacity you need to add each year becomes ever larger. So it's hard to sustain that kind of a very high growth rate forever. But beyond that, another important factor is that the biggest driver of internet traffic is video service. And video is very cacheable. Ever more video and content is being cached by CDNs, by service providers, by telcos, by content providers. So it's being cached to provide better quality of service to their customers and also to reduce international transport costs and to reduce latency. So as a consequence of that caching, those caches are being pushed ever deeper into emerging markets, into Asia, into Africa and other regions. And the spread of caching and more local content is starting to slow the growth of international traffic. It doesn't need to be routed via, as much of it doesn't need to be routed via submarine cables anymore. But we also don't think that traffic growth is going to keep falling at the rate that the pace is going to go to single digits anytime soon. Because even very mature markets like the US and Europe are still seeing growth rates in international traffic of around 30 to 35% annually. So even the very mature markets are still growing at a pretty rapid pace by the standards of almost any industry. Just not at the 60% plus rates that we were seeing in 4 years ago.